Hello, good morning. Not sure when you're listening to this, but it is definitely morning here where I am in this time and this place. This is Carly, and this is yet another episode of the I Learned podcast. I am having a wild adventure of making this podcast. I absolutely adore getting to watch it all unfold, including the shadow work that it is bringing up for me to be able to look and evaluate my own shit that I'm carrying around, um apparently putting myself out there and leaning into finding my voice, it brings up a lot, like a lot of different things. And part of what I want to do for a second is just to even get to process some of that out loud because I'm serious. Well, first of all, I hardly slept last night because I was so excited to get to make more podcast episodes. So that's how much I'm loving it. I love getting to talk out loud, like I mentioned, like getting to let that energy flow. It feels really, really good to allow my voice to say what it wants, that's something that I am quickly becoming addicted to, and I can feel it shifting my overall energy. And I think because of that, I'm how I look at it, I feel like I'm moving to like a next level, and my resistance and my baggage and my unhealed parts have to get healed before I can go to that next level. So like those things are coming up here. And some of those things, like it was just ridiculous. Like this morning, I told you I woke up and wanted to record a podcast episode. And then I sat here for several hours writing about recording a podcast and like some ideas and some highlights, and just in general feeling like I'm nervous and I don't know what to say and how am I going to do this and how am I going to string together something that people want to listen to. And I was like, Carly, like this isn't even the first episode. Like what are you talking about? Why are you back in this energy? I felt like almost like I should have outgrown that nervousness already. And so then it was just, kind of like slipping a little bit into like a self-critical place. And I was like, no, no, we're not gonna beat up on myself here, but like I do want to know I made progress past the point of being nervous. I hit record multiple times over the last couple days. So why this morning waking up am I feeling nervous, like really, really nervous? Like maybe I don't want to do that. Um, and so I did. I took a second, and this is something that I've learned to do. I went to the observation deck, is what I call it, and I observed those emotions, and I observed that fear mainly of like basically asking myself and then allowing for a response like, what are you so afraid of? Like, what is it that you're actually worried about? This nervous energy of, I don't think I'm ready. Where's that coming from? Because you've done it multiple times and you want to do it again. So, what is it that's standing in the way? And honestly, like, I couldn't really come up with anything. I think there were some older ideas around that as they came up, I was like, well, but that's not valid and that's not valid and that's not valid. And it was just like, you know, what if people don't like it? And what if they think less of me because they're seeing the real me? And that's mainly the two. And as those two came forward is like, here's why I'm nervous. I'm like, well, but I'm really not nervous about that. So if that's the only reason you've got fear, then I guess we're just gonna jump on in. And so that happened, like 5 minutes ago, and here we are having this conversation. And I think my point in all of that, and what I'm very much in the process of learning, is that we don't graduate from our baggage like once and for all. I think it's something that happens in layers. It's something that you can make your way past it in the moment, and then it can still come up again tomorrow. You could still wake up with it again. And this morning was such an interesting point of reflection to literally just stop and observe that fear and ask it, what are you scared of? Why don't you want to record this episode? What are you worried about? And the justification for those fears, they were outdated. I didn't believe it anymore. And realizing that in this moment is very cool to feel a fear and then choose to weigh other information against it. Like the fear doesn't have to be the solo piece of evidence that you're using to make your decision. And I'm realizing as I'm able to do that, to factor more things into the equation, like my passion, like the fact that I couldn't sleep last night because I literally checking my phone at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. Is it morning yet? Is it time to get up and have coffee and record a podcast? Like I really wanted to. And then this fear crept in. And so getting to just kind of sit with it for a second and ask it some questions like, what are you trying to tell me? What are we worried that's going to happen? Um, yeah, and getting to realize that that fear is working off of outdated information. And yet, as I'm feeling it, as it's creeping into my mind, it doesn't feel outdated. It feels very current. And yet, I think this experience of moving beyond the fear and like logically, consciously having that discussion with myself about, if those are your only reasons, that's what you're worried about. That's why we can't record because you're afraid of those things. Well, we already decided that we're not going to be afraid of those things. So I'm going to decide that again today, and I'm going to go ahead and record this episode. And I think in that doing of that, thanking my fear and allowing myself to proceed anyway, I think the fear shrinks a little bit. And I'm able to almost prove to myself that it's okay. Like that fear wants to keep me safe. I mean, this is all things that I've learned around what fear actually is, because it can be paralyzing. Like that's the whole point of fear as it gets released into your bloodstream, like the chemicals of fear. Like it triggers fight or flight response. Like your adrenaline gets released. Like you're ready to survive. You're ready to defend your life. And I don't think anybody is threatening my life as I push record and make a podcast episode. So the fear sometimes can get blown out of proportion in our subconscious. And, that's all happening in our subconscious. So by the time it creeps into your conscious mind, it's, it's just current and right now and can be overwhelming. And that's the trick of the observation deck, is to allow the emotional energy to move. Like it's not a permanent thing, like saying I'm afraid. Like that's not a death sentence. That's not a permanent state of being. Emotions, the best thing about our emotions is that they're all temporary. Second to second to second to moment to moment to moment, our emotions are shifting. And sometimes they stay steady, they stay consistent. We create the same emotion over and over again. But you can also, like when you're in a dark spot, you can tell yourself this emotion is temporary. I do it all the time, like with my fear just now. I mean, this is the energy that's present. So I don't want to discount that it's present. It obviously showed up here today to have a conversation with me. So, like just like anybody that I care about, when a piece of me rises to the surface and wants to be heard, I try my best to hear what that piece of myself has to say. And even though that piece can sometimes show up as fear, which hurts and it's scary and it's painful, and it reminds us of all the things, all the what ifs, all the worst case scenarios, but that's still a part of myself. And this morning I learned that I'm still a little bit nervous about what people are going to think of me as I'm telling these stories and as I'm revealing my true self. Like I told my friend yesterday, as I sent the podcast link, he was like, well, I'll bet it'll be great. And I responded, let's hope it is, because this is the real me. So it kind of is what it is. And that's honestly like a really easy place to be. Like, I'm not trying and I don't have to try. I can just be. I feel very much in my self-acceptance, in my self-love, as I say things like that, that like it feels so comfortable to just be, to just be who I am. And that is absolutely something that I've learned. I was, I would say like even 6 months ago, that was not my operating mode. So yeah, that's definitely something we can learn, to go from like trying to be something specific to being what you are. Like that's reminding me of as I learned journals. You see the advice everywhere, just in books in general, that you need a niche, you need something specific that you're about, and then within your niche, be the best at that niche. And all of that feels very foreign to me. Like that doesn't really calculate, doesn't really compute, cannot be calculated is what I say about that, because I don't get that. I wouldn't know where to begin to like come at it from that angle. I am so much more coming at things from the opposite side of get really happy and then follow the path of most fun, right? So like raise your vibration as high as you possibly can and then let your own inspired ideas flow through you and have as much fun with it as you possibly can. So niche doesn't factor into my approach. Doing things that other people will consume doesn't really factor into my approach. Like this is an exercise in getting myself to use my voice and speak myself out loud, like represent my true self out loud. That is a brand new experience for me. And shocker, on day 3, I'm still nervous. So let's just be grateful that one of the things I've learned is that, the only way to get comfortable at something new is to repeatedly expose yourself to it. So I'm right there with you. I have a Taurus rising. I tend to be pretty comfortable in what I know. But at the same time, I got all that Gemini energy that is just like constantly forcing me to step out and learn something new and do new things. Coffee sip. And this is one of them. This is one of those times where it's so easy to just stay in comfort. It's so easy to just let yourself off the hook that like, well, I'm scared. I'm afraid. So that means I don't have to do it. And sometimes it does. Like I told you about the panic attack in the restaurant in the first episode that gave me the vulnerability hangover to tell that story. Dude, sometimes the answer is like, okay, I give up. Okay, I can't. I can't. And that's knowing yourself, right? Like that's knowing your personal boundaries. And sometimes, like this morning, the fear is working with outdated information. So staying put because you're afraid doesn't always make sense. Sometimes the answer is to feel into your nervousness a little bit, to realize that your fears aren't actually things that you consciously believe at this time. So you're going to make a choice. You're going to make an informed choice to hit the record button and do the damn thing. And this is a fun story from last night, at the Spiritual Business Brainstorm. One of the ladies there was talking about, she's in the phase of wanting to launch her business. And it's funny because last time she told a story about how she hasn't done it yet because her office isn't set up, that she doesn't have her office unpacked, so she can't start her business yet. And it was all the reasons why, it wasn't even about the business, it was all the reasons why she couldn't do the office. And because the office wasn't done, she couldn't start the business. And so she told that story for a second time last night. And Val, my bestie Val, you gotta love her, lays it out real clear. And I know I walked away a changed person because Val was like, technically you could launch your business sitting right where you are on your couch. You don't need that office. That office being set up is a roadblock that you've put in front of yourself to make it so you can't actually start your business. And I'm sitting there just jaw open and in awe because she's speaking to me. She's talking to me. She thinks she's talking to this other woman, but she's really talking to me. And oh my goodness, like from that, I recognized myself in that situation so many different times in my life. Like even this podcast is a perfect example. I got lots of examples, but this podcast, I'm doing this on my phone. I'm sure the sound quality is amateur at best, but there was a time before I started, like, less than a week ago, uh, where I told myself that I wasn't ready to start yet because I didn't have a microphone. I didn't have like a program on my computer. I didn't have any headphones so that I could like really hear the sound. Like I didn't have the right equipment to do a podcast, so I couldn't start yet. And then Sunday night, something came over me and was like, fuck all that equipment. Like the only thing that I really need that's not negotiable is my confidence to go. And the first episode of talking about how I learned how to go for it, it was a natural place to start because that's exactly what I did. And so I just like that thought of, are there still ways that I'm putting roadblocks in front of myself is kind of like sticking out in my mind of like kind of just ruminating over and over and over again. And so this morning, as I'm sitting there with my nervousness, my apprehension, I wouldn't call it dread. It wasn't nearly that strong, but it was definite resistance. It was like in the pit of my stomach, like, ugh, like I'm nervous. And that was, that's where I was starting. And even that felt a little bit like, okay, so are you going to put a roadblock in front of yourself that prevents you from doing this thing that you love? Or are you going to just go for it? And here we are, 16 and a half minutes in. So I'm pretty proud. And I hope that by doing this and exposing myself to like being nervous and pressing record anyway, being scared of what people are going to think and allowing my true voice to come through anyway. I hope that the more I'm able to kind of like drag myself through these first few experiences, I feel like I'm already seeing a shift of that fear is getting smaller. The volume on that fear is getting turned down. And, the worry about what other people will think. I mean, I wonder if that ever goes away. I don't know. I'll have to keep you posted. We'll see. We'll see how it diminishes. Maybe it approaches zero, but never really gets there. I don't know. We shall observe and take note and discover and, learn and then ask new questions. That's what we do. That's what we do when we're students of life. So again, I appreciate you guys listening to these and getting something out of it. Actually, I had a little vision this morning right before I started that really gave me the confidence to go ahead, because this is what I'm hoping to achieve, is that every time you listen to an episode of I Learned, that you learn something. That in my honest portrayal of what I'm going through, that you see your own reflection in a more loving light, in a more honest way, in a more updated way. So often what's hanging around in our shadow and our subconscious is just very outdated. It's from childhood, it's from 10 years ago, whatever the case is. And getting honest about what you're carrying and where it is that you're trying to get to. Like if you want the life of your dreams, you're gonna have to put down the shit you're carrying around with you that is the reason, the stories that you're telling about why you can't do it. So yeah, if it literally feels like leaping off the cliff. And I feel like through every single episode of this podcast, I'm getting a little bit better at leaping off that cliff. So, maybe I help you learn how to do that for yourself. Maybe you just think I'm funny to listen to. Maybe you think my voice is soothing. I don't know. Apparently that's a thing that I get told sometimes. Not sure what that's about. I do really enjoy singing. That's one of the things I'm learning right now. I'm teaching myself how to let myself sing in front of other people. And kind of like this podcast, starting with a very, very tiny group of people that I trust. That seems to be a recurring theme. So maybe on an episode soon, I can talk about how I learned to trust people, because that was a many, many years work in progress. But I think, for this one, I think that's a good place to leave it. So there you go. There's your latest installment. And I'm sure I'll be seeing you again real soon. Have a good time. Or a good day, whatever. It's always a good time in this good day. So have a good rest of your day.